of the night, Jodi Linton. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hello, can y'all hear me?
Yes, I can hear
you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. So, how are you the night before Thanksgiving? Is it crazy at the house? What's the temperature over there?
No, because we're not going to have anybody over this year. So it's just me, my husband, and 2 kids. So we'll just cook something tomorrow. We're not even going to cook a Thanksgiving dinner because they don't they don't particularly eat it when we do have it. So it was pointless. They would rather have pizza.
Right.
So we're just going to cook we're going to cook a normal dinner, like chicken Parmesan. Ooh. And they'll eat that because it's spaghetti. So it'll make things a lot easier.
Were they relieved when they were like, we don't have to have Thanksgiving dinner. We can have pasta?
They like the dinner we're having, but they miss grandparents not coming over. But it is what it is this year. But they won't eat the stuffing or any of that. I have a 13 and a 10-year-old, and it's still like they're
picky.
A 6-month-old and a 2-year-old, and you're like, you got to eat it before you can get off. So it's kind of nice not having to do that this year.
That's so funny. Are you going to have like a pie or like any sort of like fall Thanksgiving dessert maybe to go with it?
No.
I love this. It's like, no, Thanksgiving.
I bought them those little turkey cookies. They have the imprint, and so they can just put it on the sheet pan. Perfect. And then they can cook it.
I love it. That's so funny.
Because we were not going to have a kitchen in a couple of weeks. So I was like, we're going to do it easy.
Oh man, getting a demo done too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a big undertaking for the holidays.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, Jodi, let's go ahead and take a couple of steps back and introduce yourself to our readers and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. My name's Jodi Linton, as it's written on the board, I guess, behind Gwen's face. I'm from Texas. I live in North Texas, which is about 2 hours north. We're about an hour and a half to 2 hours north of the Dallas area. And that's my hometown. It's Wichita Falls. It's where I grew up. And we moved back here about 4 years ago, but we spent a good 11 years in Austin before we moved after graduating from college. My husband was a school teacher for 11 years down in Austin. He taught AP English, and then he also taught reading English. And then so I worked for Ann Richard's Sons in the law offices as a temp.
Cool.
Where downtown in Austin, when we first moved, I have a major in history. And then within our first year of marriage, we were expecting. And so I subbed, and then I stayed home. And within that time, I could not sleep. I was having insomnia and staying up late. And that is when I wrote my first book and got an agent for that series and sold to Entangled. And that would have been 2014, I think. Yeah, 2014. Wow. And I think it was published in 2015. So that's as long as I've been writing. And just recently, I've decided to take the indie route and write some cozies because I sold a mystery book, and it was up more in romance when it sold to a publisher, but I read more mystery thrillers. And so I kind of got pushed into romance a little bit when I sold. And that's actually when I read my first romance book, is when I sold. I had never read one prior to then. And it was Tracy Wolf's book that she had published with, I think it was Entangled Brazen back then. She had published a book that hit New York Times. Back then, it was when she was writing under category at the time. Yep. And that would have been the first actual romance book I'd ever read. Like, I read Jodi Picoult a lot, which she had a little romance in her, and I'm trying to think of who else I might have read back then. I'm not sure. I'm trying to think. I don't think Mary Higgins Clark had that much romance in her, because I had some of those on the shelf that was given to me. Oh, I did read Eve Duncan stories, and they had a slight romance arc in them, but it wasn't like full on romance. So that was the first romance book I'd ever picked up, because my mom didn't really read romance. She read a lot of bios, like biographies and
boring stuff that you're like, I'm not interested.
And so she read a lot of those kind of stories. And so, that's how I kind of got into that. And then I just recently decided to go back and start writing mysteries. And I went the cozy route just because I didn't have to do so many thriller. You have to have more on page or and I was just like, and I read those, but I couldn't really get my head into those to write one of those for the moment at the time. So I was like, and I do enjoy cozies. So they're more, because one of my favorite series was Sookie Stackhouse. And I like the Janet Ivanovich, Stephanie Plums, even though I don't think they're categorized as cozies, but they do kind of, I think
have that vibe, but yeah, they're like categorized.
Stephanie Plums kind of go that direction just a little bit more. They're more so like somebody died, but you don't really see the dead body on the page, or, somebody's kidnapped, but you don't really see it happen, kind of type of thing. And so I do read that kind of style of book.
That's cool. So I want to go back to like how you kind of stumbled into romance, like why you didn't do mystery first then.
Well, actually, the first book I sold was Pretty Reckless, and it was the first book in the Lainey Briggs series.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually a full-on mystery book, and it was shot. At the time, they didn't actually know what to do with it because it was a little too zany or a little too it was almost everything that I like into one. And at the time, first person really wasn't selling. Like it took a huge shift, it seems. But at the time, first person was not selling, which now I think people are like, wow, first person really wasn't selling. When did nobody ever read that? But it was selling in erotic romance.
Mm-hmm.
But that whole thing with going back to Stephanie Plum, those books just weren't selling at the time. Unless you were Janet Ivanovich, you really weren't selling that style of a mystery at the time. I think it was more you were selling, was it like the Seal romance, the Seal books, or the, I guess you would say the E. Duncan style mysteries were selling kind of at the time, but you weren't getting a whole lot of that zany, funny first person mystery, with a little bit of romance in it. And at the time, Entangled picked it up. And so we sold there because they bought a 6-book series, but then I shortened it and didn't write the entire series, but they bought it as a 6-book series. And they wanted more romance in it. And so when my agent sold it there, they were just like, they had to up it because they were a romance house. They weren't selling other genres as much as they are now. I think they have a couple of thrillers that have came out recently. I'm not sure, but I think they have a couple of other ones, but at the time they were strictly romance. And I was a very lengthy book compared to their house because they sold a lot of categories. So I had to up the romance. And so I read a few and just kind of started adding.
You were like, I became an over the weekend expert on romances.
And I had a really good editor at the time and she helped me add it, but it was really straightforward mystery. It was follow the breadcrumbs case. There was no romance in it. And it was just, that's where it wound up. And that's how I kind of got into, and then I wrote a few category romances after that. And then I've come back to just writing straightforward mystery. So
that's interesting. Because that was one of my questions for you, was like sort of that genre journey. Because knowing you, every time I talk to you, you're always like, I love cozies. I want to write cozies. Mysteries is my passion. This is where I'm meant to be. And like, were you nervous about, once you were kind of accepting of the fact that you were ready to put the romance aside and you wanted to focus on that, were you nervous about that? Or did you feel freed, feeling like you could actually embrace the genre that you really wanted to write in?
I took a break for a while because I let go of my agent and I kind of wanted to figure out a different path on what to do. And we moved, and my husband and I bought his family business. So we had a lot of things that were going. We work together now, but now since the COVID, I work at home. So I get a break. But we do work together. But so it was but my friend, one of my good friends, she's the one that kind of helped me. She read the cozy and really liked it. I wrote it in about a month. And then she was like, yeah, you should move forward this direction. So that's it just kind of came to me. Like I was just I couldn't write a romance at the time because when everything I wrote actually a romance for Kristen Proby, which was for her Bordeaux series. And that was the last romance I wrote. And that came out, I think I signed with her last fall, and that came out in April. And I was just having a difficult time writing. Had another series that was a kind of, I guess you call it a sweet romance or small town romance series, kind of in the vein of like Rachel Gibson that I'd been writing a little on, and I put one out and I couldn't get the other two to go. And then I just came up with this idea, and I had my really good friend told me to run with it. It was a thriller at the beginning. Because I was reading, what was it? I have it up here on my shelf. Oh yeah. I was reading My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing. And so it kind of had a lot of stuff going on. And she looked at it and she's like, yeah, maybe it could be a cozy. She goes, that doesn't really fit. So like at the beginning, it was really like, because I was reading that. And then which other one do I have up here? Oh, I was reading, what was that other one that's up here? Oh, I was reading Little Fires Everywhere. And so I was reading both of those books at the same time, and they were kind of molding the story. And then she kind of read it and she said it's funny. So she goes, it has some funniness in it a little bit. So she's like, I think it's more of a cozy. So that's where it kind of spun off from and got to this point. So.
That's so cool. So how did, tell us about the Killer Outdoors, tell us about this world, and because, we've got a couple of books in store for us. So what can readers expect with the Killer Outdoors?
Well, my husband and I, our ultimate goal is, our life dream is to be able to retire in either Red River, Taos area. We go to vacation there a lot, or in the Salida, Colorado area. So I thought it would be fun to do an outdoor series based in those areas that we like to travel. Also, my kids' favorite movie, they show it to all their friends. They're addicted to it. We've had to rent it so many times on Amazon Prime. We should probably buy the DVD. You can't find it in stores. Is They Love the Great Outdoors. I think it's the most funniest thing ever. And so I was like, I was like, so that's where the title came from. I was like, I'll do a play off of that. And then I was like, that would actually be really fun. And I started kind of skimming through a lot of the cozies that were coming out, and I read a few of them. And I started realizing there's not very many. I knew there was camper cozies. That's a really popular, where they own a camper, or they own a camping site, but I didn't really see anything where there's actually an adventure guide that actually owns their own adventure company where you can rent mountain bikes, take somebody rafting. And since we go vacation there all the time, we were I pay for those kind of events when we go. And so it's it's interesting that they didn't actually have somebody that owned a business like that. So I thought it would be fun to have her have a business that wasn't in a bookshop or wasn't a coffee shop, and that she's an outdoors person. And it gave me that ability to write a little bit more action into the story, because in my prior works with Lainey, I kind of like to have I wrote a little bit more action scenes in those. And so it gave me that ability with this to have a little bit more of an action scenes versus just the normal, just going around hunting down the clues.
Right.
And which she does, but it gave me that ability to have some more action little scenes of hiking scenes or rafting scenes or, bicycling scenes, because that's kind of career she has. So, and each book is named, each title is based off a movie, a pun or a play on a movie. And I picked a lot of 80s 80s movies or 90s movies. And so they'll all have some kind of pun or play on that with something with an outdoors activity in them. And so that's the direction it's going. The third book is Raiders of the Campsite. And so that's a play on that Indiana Jones show that I loved when I was little. And it'll be a treasure hunting, kind of kidnapping kind of story. And so each book will be kind of based off of that. And I think I have Nightmare on the Bike Trail, which is the fourth book. And that one's based off of a Nightmare on Elm Street title. But we actually went mountain biking in Ruidoso in September. We rented a cabin, went down there, and we didn't do anything else. We got all takeout and went and ate in the cabin. And we were like, let's rent mountain bikes. This will be fun. Well, it didn't go too well. The kids kept starting and going. We have really good pictures that we took beforehand where it looks like we're real outdoorsy, and this is what we do. But if anybody had seen us 15 minutes later, I had my daughter who was crying. Aww. And then she was we went downtown, and my husband's I'll go get the truck and pick y'all up. And she's I'm so thirsty. And I'm well, I don't have the credit card on me. I can't buy anything. She goes, why did you leave it with Dad? Why would you let him just take the money? I'm just kidding. And she's I'm going to die before he gets here. So it was not like that. Oh, we're real outdoorsy. It looks like that in the picture we posted, so everybody would think it. But no, we died. We went about 5 minutes on the trail, and then we had to go down to the sidewalk, where it was smooth, and we barely made it back. And then my husband took the wrong trail back to the cabin because he didn't know another way, because he only took the way that he drove his truck. Well, it turned out that was the trail that you don't take. It was all mountains. He said that at one point he just wanted to lay down on the side of the road and die, because he couldn't, because it was just hill after hill after hill. And and when he got back to the bike shop, they said, so how was your bike ride? He's well, the family gave out on me, so I had to go back. And he told him what road he biked on. He was he said a bad word, but he was whoa, man. He goes, you don't bike that one. And then he gave him a high five because he made it up it.
He's
and survived.
For Jeeps only, man.
Yeah, it was an experience. So. We won't ever do it again.
That's perfect research though. You have to put that in one of the books eventually. That
yes.
Is such.
It was bad. But
Oh
that's
man,
kind of
so
how that comes about. So we vacation in that area, and we
mhm.
haven't got to go as much this year, but we normally try to go 3 or 4 times a year. We'll go in off season and when it's time to go rafting, and hopefully we can go back next year and do it. But that's our little mini trips. We like to, because it's so close, because going to Red River is about 6 hours from our
Oh, yeah.
hometown, which is about I think it's shorter than driving to Galveston. Galveston might be the same distance. It might,
Mhm.
or a little bit longer, but yeah, we can get over to New Mexico real quick from
Oh,
where
and it's
we
so
are.
beautiful
So
because you could see the gorge. Like it's so pretty
yes,
over there.
yeah, we can get there pretty fast. So a lot of, and also the Red River was founded by people from our hometown. And so a lot of the, so you have a lot of people from up in this town area in this we're in Texoma, that Texoma area. You have a lot of people that go there for vacationing because it's a really short area to get to snow, get to colder weather, and see the mountains. So that's like where we always go.
That's awesome. It's like right in your backyard.
Yes.
And you don't really have to drive. Oh, I say you don't have to really drive through Amarillo, but you do. You still have to
Yeah,
drive
we
through
do, but it's
Amarillo.
on the outskirts. Like you pass by that, what is it, Texas Steakhouse, I think is what it is.
Mhm.
Big Texan.
Big Texan.
Yeah, so you kind of go past that and then you go through Dumas, I think it is, and then it just takes you right out to New Mexico. Yeah.
So what is your favorite outdoor activity?
Probably rafting. We love to go raft. We like river rafting. It's fun. Yeah, that's probably, we try to do it every time we go, but we weren't able to do it this year because of shutdowns, but that's our favorite thing to do.
What is your least favorite?
Mountain bike riding. I won't ever do that again.
You're like, check that off the list. We'll never do that ever again.
And I was like, I'm only 37. I can't make this mountain bike work for me. And we've been biking around the neighborhood, but I have a cruiser bike, like one of those pretty pricey cruiser bikes. And I was like, I've been doing this every day since everything shut down. It didn't work. It's not the same thing. No.
Oh man, that's so funny.
It was bad.
So now, Jodi, we're actually going to enter into our rapid fire question portion.
Okay.
So I'm just going to kind of throw some questions out at you, answer them how you feel like, and we're going to get going. Okay.
Okay.
So who was your first book boyfriend or girlfriend?
Oh. I'm trying to think. Are we talking about like when I was little?
Sure. However you want to answer that.
Okay. My mom used to read the Ramona and Beast. Is it Ramona and Beasts by Judy Blume? Yeah. Yep. So those have probably been the first memory of them. So to me, so that would probably be it.
That's awesome. So you mentioned earlier that your mom was a big bio reader. So how did you figure out what kind of books you liked to read?
I read a lot. I wrote for the newspaper in the yearbook when I was in high school. I actually was published for the first time when I was 14 through the Texas. I won a poetry contest, and so they submitted all these poems. But I wrote a lot of books in English class, and so that's how I started kind of getting involved in it. And my English teacher got me into writing for our yearbook newspaper teacher, and so I kind of got into it. I guess, what was that one book? I really got invested in the Jodi P cult when I was young. That was some of my favorites, and then I kind of just veered from there. And I think I read Judy Blume's Sisters. I think that was the title of that book. It was her first adult book she ever wrote. I think it was called Sisters, where they lived on a beach, and I can't remember all of it, but I kind of started reading those. And then I jumped around. I read some Stephen King's and some Michael Crichton, and then kind of started getting into the mystery books eventually. And I just kind of started picking up. My mom wasn't a big reader. My mother-in-law was. Her mom owned a bookstore back in the day, and she used to work there. And so my mother-in-law wasn't. She was an English teacher, but my mom wasn't a big reader. She read like the Shirley Temple biography and stuff like that.
She's like, I love a good celebrity bio. It's my favorite.
That was her favorite stuff. So that was her thing.
That is so funny. But that's cool. That's something that you had in common with your mother-in-law, though, that you guys could talk about books and share them back and forth with each other.
Yeah, she has a lot of Daniel Stills, and they have some signed Larry McMurtry's because he used to come to the bookshop back in the day, and we have one. So I think it's Lonesome Dove. I think it's the one that we have a copy of that he signed. But they were one of the little mom and pop stores in town that they used to come down and do a lot of sign and readings at before the big box stores came in. So they have all those.
Yeah. Treated it like You've Got Mail and gobbled them all up.
I think it was Walden Books that came in and kind of started putting everybody out back in the late 80s. So yeah, they had it all the way through the 80s, I think, or early 90s. And then they had to close the doors.
Yeah. And then it was time.
Yeah.
Oh. All right. So what is your favorite trope to read?
Probably, I think I don't know if it's a trope, but I like, well, enemies to lovers. I like that trope, but I also like triangle tropes. I just think they're fun to read. I know a lot of people don't like those, but I think they're fun. They add a little, because
Full drama.
I do like Lifetime. And so they're kind of like Lifetime movies, you know? So I do like those books. So those are probably my favorite, but I do like the enemies to lovers, or like say, I guess a twist on the enemies to lovers when it's the exit or they used to be friends, but they don't like each other anymore. But then they have to be pushed into a situation, but they don't like each other, but then they start liking each other. Yeah.
So what is your favorite trope to write? Or yes, you have to read it.
Probably that, enemies to lovers, or, you know, best friends that don't really know that they like each other, but they do. I like that tension because it makes for funny one-liners or good banter. So those are probably my favorite ones to do.
What are 3 things that you keep in mind when you're writing a funny scene?
Nothing. Not really, that's true. Because I go off on a tangent. my friend who's my beta reader who also is a writer, always makes me cut those scenes. She's like, you kept going on and on. I was like, I can't stop. No, I'm trying to think. I always think of like one funny instance that would be funny. Like, there was I remember one time on Facebook, Kristen Higgins posted this story about how, I don't know how old she was at the time. It sounds like her kids were still at home, but she posted a story how when I think she was getting groceries out of the trunk of her car. So she must have been young because she had a car with the trunk, you know, versus what everybody drives now, which would have been like the SUVs. Yeah. And she said, I think her dress got stuck in it. And when she had to come out of it, and I think she was in her slip in her driveway it was just, she told this story on her Facebook page. And I was like, those are the kind of things that I think about. Like sometimes but I'm like, that really happened to her. So I was like, that was embarrassing. But like, you know what I mean? But like, I just remember those are I guess those would be the kind of scenes, like, you know, hers is that real life scene, but those are the kind of ones where, like, you know, like when I was little, my mom used to lock us out of the house sometimes. It was awful. She'd always lock her keys in the car. We couldn't get in the house. And I was the smaller one. So like she had it jimmied the bathroom window and she'd have to push me through there.
She'd be like, Jodi, go in, you're little.
And then I'd have to go and lock the front door. So just those kind of like, you know, funny, like I think of like, what would be the one instance that would be the embarrassing scene, and then try to play off of that. But otherwise I don't really think of much. I just kind of will write, and if it turns out funny, it's funny. If it's not, then I'll just cut it. So that's kind of how I'll go.
Do you fear having to cut scenes out of the book, or are you like fine with it?
No, I'm fine. After I turned in my second book to Entangled, Pretty Reckless, that book was actually 2 books when I turned it in. And my editor said it needed to be beefed up and a little bit, you know, more action packed. So I actually took book 2 and book 3 and took those 2 plots and meshed them together. It took a long, long time. But that was like my first entrance into, or my first experience learning how do you cut. I think I cut about 25 to 30,000 words.
Wow. Yeah. You had to get the darlings out.
And I was green at the time. So it was hard, but I did it, and I meshed them all together. And so it sucks because you think, oh, I'm ahead and I'm fixing to finish, but yeah, I don't mind. I've cut stuff all the time. Like I probably have pages and I have like files filled of stuff that I've never used and will never use. So
you're like, save it for the archives.
Yes.
All right. So we already did the activities. What is the best cozy to recommend to a new reader of the genre? Or your favorite, maybe.
My favorite. I was reading, I'm trying to think of what the name of it was. It was I don't even know what the name of it is, but I actually was reading a historical cozy the other day that I really, really liked, that I found through Kensington. And I can't think of the name of what that one was. But one of my other favorites I like I think she changed the name. I like Tanya Kappas, but it's her, she's a Mel lady, but it's a new one that's out. And I thought that one was a really interesting one because she's very good at what she does. And so she has her stories really tight. And you can, if you don't know if you like it, if you read her, you'll figure out really quickly if you like cozies or if you don't like cozies. And I think is it called Mailer to Send or Send to Mail? Because I know her camper cozies are the most popular ones with readers right now. But it was her Mailer to Send because they were very tight, They're a lot shorter than her other series. So if you, and she's just been doing it forever. So if you read hers, they're very quick, and you can tell if you're going to like this kind of style of a book really fast. So I think I guess not really a series. I think she's a good writer to kind of follow. That would be a good one to, if you were looking for cozies. But I can't remember what that historical one. She was a new author, and so I can't remember it. I think they switched the cover up twice, and it came out through Kensington. I don't even know if it came out through Kensington. I think they were fixing to release a second book. But I do like that one. And then there was one by she owns her own books now, Jenna Bennett. She had a house flipping series that I enjoyed back in the day, but I don't know if she still has the same covers anymore, because I think they were through Berkeley, and I don't think Berkeley publishes them anymore, because I think she puts them out under her own name now, but I don't know what the covers actually look like. Back in the day, they had a little cat hanging from the house with paint everywhere, and those are really good series, and I like those. I like house flipping series, so her series are pretty good.
That's cool. So what is one like hobby or skill that you do not like in your cozy mysteries? Like knitting or cooking?
Oh, I probably wouldn't do knitting because I don't know how to knit. I'm trying to, or sewing. I think one that I probably wouldn't like is I personally, are you saying one that I wouldn't like to read, or one I probably wouldn't write?
I think I asked it for what you would like to read, but I am curious to know which you would be comfortable writing and which ones you wouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I like to cook personally, but I don't like actually reading ones where they're cooks. Like I could never get into Joanna. Is it Fluke? Yeah. The ones that the ones that they have on Hallmark Channel, I could never get into those because I could never see a plausible line from her owning the bakery to finding that. It just my mind wouldn't connect that direction. So I guess those are the ones I might have more hang up with. Like all the other ones, like if they're like DIYs, I like see that. I don't know why, but if they own a coffee shop, or I can kind of get past that. But for some reason, I guess it would be the bakers. I have a hard, but I don't really read baking romances either. I don't really read series where the romances, they're bakers. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's because I just like to cook, or I don't really like reading about food. I don't know. So I don't really read. I will not pick up a romance if it's a baking romance and the heroine or hero is a baker. Or a chef. I just have never gotten into those. So I don't really read
food. Yeah, because I was going to ask, is it like specifically baking, or is it like chefing, or like a competition?
Probably so, like all that. Like I just don't really read those. I don't know if I've ever written one where I think I have a side character in one of mine where she was a baker, but she wasn't really the main. It's just a job she had in the small little town. But I don't ever really seem to pick. I'll scroll past them like that. I don't know what it is. I do like to cook and I like to eat. So I don't know what it is, but I just don't really ever buy those books. So I guess that would probably be the one thing in the cozies that I wouldn't pick up, because I've never really picked up. I never really got into the Joanna Fluke ones. And then I never really picked up I can't pick up one in romance when it's a baker or a chef. And I don't know. Cool. And but I watch the Cooking Network, so I don't know. I just don't really pick them up.
It's like sometimes it works in some mediums and sometimes it doesn't. That makes sense.
Yeah. So that must be the one. So.
All right. So my last question for you is, if you were stuck in an elevator with anyone, who would you want to be stuck in an elevator with?
Oh, Reese Witherspoon. I think she's fun. I think she'd be fun. I think she's very interesting. I've always liked her since she was young. And now that she has her own little clothing company, and she does her Hello Sunshine book blog, and she likes books, and she's very family oriented. And so I think that she would be, and Legally Blonde is just one of my favorite shows. So one of my favorite movies. So she would be fun. Like she's like, that would be, I think I probably would not be able to talk. Like if I wouldn't be able to function. Yeah. So that would be it.
That's awesome. Well, there's a lot of opportunity there. You'd be like, here's some interesting stuff about my book that you should pick for your book club and adapt.
I would probably just ask her if she would let me come over for tea at her house. Because like she showed tea at her house with her mom, and they were drinking all this real expensive champagne. I would just want to go to tea and just get all her drinks that she was making.
Awesome. Well, Jodi, before we end our interview portion of our chat, how can readers find out more about you and stay in touch with you?
Okay. I have if you go to my website, that's where everything's listed and it's my name. I have a readers group on there that you can join. I do have an author Facebook page. I'm not as probably active on the author, which is the business page. I just post stuff like occasionally if I have a book for sale or something, but mostly I'm really active in the reader group. It's where I comment. I have, and then probably the reader group. I think that's probably where I'm the most active. Like we'll do live face. I think it's live FaceTimes, or I think that's what they call it on there. We'll talk like that. Or I have a YouTube page that kind of started up, but then I realized it was easier doing the live feeds on Facebook through the reader group. And so then I have an Instagram, which that's just posting. But you can find out all my books on my website. They're all listed. Even all the Southwest Exposure mysteries are listed through book 4. And with tentative release dates on a couple of them. And then the other ones have the firm release date on them. And all my previous backlist are listed there. And then there's all the links to everywhere, which would be, the reader group. And I have a newsletter. And then, but yeah, really probably the reader group. And it's just Jodi Linton's book. I think it's Jodi Linton's Book Corner or Jodi Linton's Books. And so you can just go there and that's where we're most active. I mean, lately we've been talking about home remodeling because I had questions because we remodeled our bathroom. So I wanted advice on how to pick out tile. So that's what we've been talking about.
Did they give you some
lately.
good advice?
Yeah, I was going to pick out an ugly one and they helped. So they said, don't do that. So that's where I am most of the time. That's where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, Jodi Linton, thank you so much. And she is going to take a few questions off record. All right. Thank you so much. You guys can go ahead. We're going to stop the record.